What's up, guys? Welcome to our shop. Today we're doing a video that is long overdue. After over a year on YouTube, I've never done a shop tour video. It's one that I've wanted to do, but honestly, I've just never felt like, one, that my shop was good enough of being on a shop tour video. Also, I didn't ever feel like it was clean enough to be on a shop tour video. So we are going to remedy that today, and we're starting right now. Quick shout out to all the weekend warriors that have got to keep their mower in their shop. Represent. Now this shop is 22 feet long. It is 20 feet wide this direction, and it is a two-car garage. It has a couple little alcoves here on the side, and we'll show you those. And then basically the way we're going to do this is kind of the way that most shop tour videos go. We're just going to start here over here in this far corner by the shop door, and we're just going to kind of work our way all the way around this thing. We'll also hit the center, the pieces of stuff that we've got in the middle of the room, and then we will be done. So let's get started, and we're going to start right over there. So this is the corner that I would say is kind of the non-woodworking corner. We do a lot of mechanic stuff over here. I've basically got just a simple, cheap toolbox that I got. Jessica bought me this probably 10, 15 years ago. Nothing fancy about it. Just got some simple drawers here and pliers, screwdrivers, socket accessories, wrenches. And then I keep oil and antifreeze and different things in there, battery charger, funnels, pipe wrenches, Romex, extension cords. Typically most of this stuff is non-woodworking related. And I just wanted to kind of find a little spot to kind of keep all of this stuff together just to make life a little bit easier. Now we're going to shift gears and we're going to turn and we're going to go over here. We're going to start into a little bit more of the woodworking side of things. This is just a Harbor Freight hose reel. I've had this for about 10 years. Works great. It's got about 50 foot of hose on it that I can kind of run anywhere in the shop that I need to. I've got a Boss Stitch 18 gauge nail gun. I've got the Milwaukee pin nailer. This is the cordless one. It's the only cordless nailer that I've got. And then I've got a 15 gauge rigid nailer as well. And they all kind of have their purpose. If you're looking to get a nailer, my first suggestion is to go with the 18 gauge. It will really get you by with a lot of different things. I had this for years and years and years before I ever switched and started getting into any of these others. So coming down from the nail guns is the table saw sled here. This is one that I built, and it's kind of a hybrid of Brad from Fix This Build That, along with maybe Nick Ferry and Tamar from 3x3 Custom. This table saw sled has the T-track in there, and that's really handy, especially if you're ever trying to cut anything small. It really makes it a lot safer to be able to clamp that down. I've got the Cat's Moses stop block on it. It's literally my favorite stop block for stuff like this. Coming on around right here, this is just kind of a little French cleat wall that I built. These are just little simple little boxes and containers, and these have got pocket hole screws and nails and just all kinds of just small parts organizing kind of stuff here. And then right on down below is the Cobalt air compressor, and this air compressor is similar to what you would see from like California Air in terms of volume. So this is very quiet, and I will never have another Pancake air compressor that's that loud again. This is a little bit smaller, but I do like it. It's got wheels, you can roll it around, and so for us, like right now, especially like remodeling this house, everything that I've got is not battery powered when it comes to my nailers. I can easily just wheel this around, take it wherever I need it to go, into whatever room. Works great. Moving on is the 10-inch bandsaw from Win. My buddy Matt actually gave me this. I think it's funny, I really had never bought a bandsaw, and I don't use one a ton, but now that I have it, I find that there are just these moments when I really need it, and it comes in really handy. So thanks, Matt, for that. I appreciate that. So moving on over here, we got the trash can, and then above the trash can, I've got a Stanley power strip. I like these power strips. They're a little more industrial grade, and you're gonna find that most of the shop, I feel like, is run on a power strip. But these are really handy. They've got a lot of different outlets, and if you're in a bind and you don't have the time or even the knowledge to run a bunch of outlets and stuff in your shop, this is a way that you can kind of do it and get by. Then up here, I've basically just got my jig here that I use for if I need to straight line any material. Over here too, and I kind of missed this, but this is actually, this just looks like a board hanging here, but it's got a little bit of sandpaper. It's got sticky back sandpaper on it. A sticky back sandpaper on it.
Sticky back sandpaper I don't even know what that means.
No one knows what it means, but it's provocative.
And I use that as like a planer sled. So if I need to take the wobble or the twist out of some board or something, I can put it on that and run it through the planer. Moving on from that is a tool that I actually didn't really know existed until I got it for Christmas. My parents got me this. This is a BladeRunner from Rockwell. And essentially it is a jigsaw flipped upside down on a table now. So this is just like a jigsaw blade here. And it's one of those things that you would think, what in the world would I use that for? This is super, super handy. Like when we were doing flooring and stuff like that, if you've got to cut a notch out around something, you just walk in here and it's handy to be able, because you've got it on a table and you can just cut out a little notch. You can do whatever you need to do. It's really not that expensive. You can pick these up, I believe, at Lowe's, and I know you can pick them up on Amazon as well. Moving on from here is the Porter Cable drill press. This is just a small one, nothing fancy, but it does everything that I need it to do so far. I know that at some point I may kind of outgrow this. I don't know. I think that that's the thing too when it comes to woodworking that we've just got to remember is that not all woodworkers, not all makers are created equal. We all may have different niches that we're in. It's like, I know I follow a lot of different people on Instagram, and some of the makers that I follow, they're into scroll work, and then some of them are into CNC work, and some of them are into dovetail joinery, and so there's a lot of different little, when you really start to dig down, whether it's in woodworking or DIY or whatever, there's a lot of different areas that you can go with this stuff. And so I think that when sometimes we see people's setups and we go, man, that would be really cool, or that seems overkill. Well, what may seem overkill to me actually may be just fine for somebody else because they really need that. That's the type of work that they do a lot. So for me, right now, this drill press works. It does what I need it to do. So moving right along from the drill press, we're coming over here to a clamp rack, and I built this. This was actually off of Brad from Fix This, Build That. He's got a little plan set where he shows how to build this. I built this based on that. Most of my clamps are just Harbor Freight clamps. There's a couple, I have 2 Bessie clamps. These are the few and the proud, but they are there. One of these days I'll get some more. Unfortunately, they just keep going up in price. But here's what I'll tell you. I've used Harbor Freight clamps for 10 years. And they work fine. They're not perfect, and they're not as good as a parallel clamp like this. These are really good, but these are light, they're quick, and they're easy to use. And for the most part, for what I do, they tend to work. Now, I know that there are gonna be situations where you really need a true setup that's gonna give a lot cleaner, smoother, flatter surface, and those are better. But just understand, you can get by with Harbor Freight clamps, no problem. I've been doing it for 10 years and I've built a lot of furniture. I've done a lot of different projects, and so you can get by with them. Going on from there, I come around here, and this is gonna be, you've probably seen this in some of our videos, but this wall back here behind me is the 20-foot wall here. And what we ended up doing with this wall is we took it and we took a bunch of old wood and kind of wanted to make an accent wall on this back side. This is not actually barnwood. It looks like barnwood when you look at it, but actually it is fence picket wood. So I had a buddy of mine that is a fence builder, and he has tons and tons and tons of old fence stuff. And I asked him one time, I was like, hey man, any chance I could get some of that old lumber from you? And he said, yeah, like we have 5-foot sections of it. You're welcome to come and get it. Do whatever you want to do with it. So that's what we ended up doing. Now, took a lot of work, had to pull a lot of nails because, you know, we're not talking about the boards. They're 5-foot sections of old fence that you got to go load up, bring here, and then we just pulled all the nails out of them. And then we reused them. But for us, it kind of was kind of who we are. We're kind of a little more vintage. We kind of like that kind of look. Also, it gives you something to put a bunch of nails in and hang stuff up. I really like that as an alternative to putting up plywood or OSB or something like that. So as we keep coming on around here, I've got a Wise cam. I've got an old Ritz container there. It's got a bunch of old tools of Jessica's grandpa's old hand tools and some different files and screwdrivers, things like that. A couple little bins, things of that nature, peanut butter jars with bolts and nails and machine screws and things like that. And then also I've got another one of these Stanley power strips here, as well as the cabinets that we've built here. Now these cabinets are basically a frameless cabinet, but they're just shaker style doors, but they're a frameless cabinet. We built these, and this is basically our paint station and area. This is where we keep most of that stuff, try to keep it put up there. And then the next cabinet over, this is where I keep our finishes, and this is where wax and glue and things like that go. Now, we made these shelves on this cabinet narrower, so they're about half the depth of this entire cabinet. We did that because I wanted to be able to add these for caulking and things like that, as well as over here, I've got a place for rubber gloves and things like that. Continuing on from the cabinets on down, this workbench here, this is basically part of the chop saw bench. I just banged this together with 2x4s. This is before I had a Craig jig. These screws are literally just in joint screws into this and a bunch of 2x4s. It is not pretty, but it does work. I built this about 10 years ago, and it's just been something that has just never gotten changed. I've got big plans to eventually see it changed into something else, something fancy, but I'm just not there yet. But it does get me by, it does do what I need it to do. Coming over here to the chop saw is the Bosch. This is the axial glide chop saw. This is a great chop saw. The only thing I don't like about it is the dust collection, but I feel like that unless you've got a Festool Capex, it's just gonna be kind of the norm. I think there are some that are probably a little better, but I like this because of this kind of knuckle boom arm in here. It doesn't have a traditional slide, and so it's able to back up against the wall. Saves a lot of space. If you're in a small shop, that matters. Now, all of that being said, I kind of think this thing's like 650 bucks. I bought this about 5 years ago. So it's definitely an investment, but I have zero issues with it. It's great. I love using it, and so it works well. I've got it connected up to just a rigid shop vac. Moving on down is the other side of this workbench, and just a little container thing that I built, gosh, probably 8-9 years ago. And it's just, again, a bunch of little bits. This is where I keep like concrete bits and stuff. This is like paddle bits. This is just miscellaneous bits, hole saws, stuff here. I just drilled holes in the top of this and put, you know, self-centering bits and stuff like that. Stuff that I use a little more. I just drilled some holes and I just stand them up in there. Same thing over here with my Craig stuff. These are my Craig bits. I just stand those up in there. And there's just a bunch of junk sitting on top of it. So again, this is about as clean as it's getting. So we're running with it. Down below, there's my paint sprayer that's in that box. And then I've got 4 totes there that's just got different things in there, for everything from door latches to hinges, hanging hardware, handles, pulls, batteries, small parts. And then as we go from there, up here is the, this cabinet here is kind of where I house all my drills and stuff like that. And what I did was I just took a normal, just a shelf, and then I cut a groove out of them so that all of my drills and stuff could slide right in there. I mounted my drill chargers here so that I could get in there to that. This is my charger for the 20 volt DeWalt. And that's pretty much most of the stuff that I've got on the drills and stuff is DeWalt and Milwaukee. My Milwaukee stuff is all 12 volt and my DeWalt stuff is 20 volt. Love them both. Up above that, some more just containers of bits. I've got a small trim router up there. I've also got just different router bits and stuff there, as well as finished nails and things there, and an iron because you gotta put edge banding on. So just picked up a cheap iron from dollar store and it works. As we continue on down this wall, this is kind of my cabinet of shame. I've just got a lot of junk in here. There's a lot of just like electrical junk, pads to put on the bottom of furniture. I got a soldering kit. I've got a bunch of books and manuals and bandsaw blades and edge banding, and I've got a dowel jig. I've got the Bloom hinge jig. Just a lot of different things that are in here that need to be kind of organized. This is kind of like if I can't find a place for it over here, I'm just like, I'll throw it in this cabinet. That's typically what ends up happening. Over here, I've got a Amazon Echo here. I use that mainly just for music in the shop. Also, it's handy to be able to talk to people in the house. I can drop in there and just say, hey, can you send one of the boys out? Or hey, can somebody bring me a drink? Or, you know, tell my wife to make a sandwich.
You hungry? Hey, Ma! Can we get some meatloaf?
I don't do that, by the way.
The meatloaf!
I don't want to die. Anyway, so I've got some Craig stuff here. I've got the Craig drawer slide jig, Craig hardware jig. I've got a Japanese handsaw up there. I've got an old plane that my dad gave me and don't use it at all, but it's just a hand plane that he gave me a long time ago. Just some old nut drivers and stuff that I found in an antique shop, some hand saws. Also, I've got the jaw horse from Rockwell, and I really like this thing. So used to it stayed set up there, but I needed to figure out a way to save the space, so I went ahead and folded it back up. It folds up really small. It is super, super handy. It's not something that I have to have every day, but when you're in a bind and you need it, there's not much that can take its place because I don't have like a true woodworker's vise or anything like that. So it really does a good job of being able to kind of help with some of those type issues. So moving along this third wall, this is the lumber wall. I've got a lot of different things up here for different projects that we've done in the past. These are, I just purchased these from Grizzly. They just mount on the wall, and you know, occasionally I kind of wonder, like, can you overload them? I assume you can. I kind of get nervous sometimes, wondering one of these days if like a wall is going to give away, but I try not to go too overboard. They work really well. I kind of set this up so that if I needed to be able to have longer stuff down here and shorter stuff down here, I could. That was kind of the idea. And then below that, I've just got a bunch of scraps here. And then also, these are just a lot of offcuts from different plywood and things like that. This is a whole bunch of plywood that we actually just purchased yesterday. I've got some little bit of walnut down below, strip stack there, ready to go for whatever kind of little walnut project we end up doing. And now we're gonna kind of turn from that and we're gonna turn to the middle of the shop, which is where we're gonna find the table saw and the workbench and a few other things. So this is my workbench. I built this about 8 years ago. This is where I keep my Craig jig. And then also I've just got a jigsaw, some other containers of some things, saw blades. Keep my skill saw right here, some vacuum bags right here. This other side is kind of open. This side has a divider. And so the other side looks pretty similar to this, only on the other side I've got sandpaper up top, and then down below I've got my sanders and stuff down below. And then also over there I've also got a vacuum cleaner right here that you can use for when you're sanding, and I've got it on an auto switch as well, so that's pretty handy. The other thing that I like about this workbench is that I put it on casters, and the casters that I've used here, these are casters that kind of flip up out of the way when you're done with them. But if you need to fold them down and move things around, you can. They work really good. I got these off Amazon. I'll put a link for those if you're ever looking for something like that. And then my poor old workbench top has seen better days. It has 1,000 cuts all over it. It's been painted on, it's been glued on, it's been everything. But I've honestly just not changed it because I'm not at a place right now where I'm doing a lot of fine woodworking and things like that. And so because of that, because it's not that big of a deal, I've left it the same. And it's kind of a weird running joke that I have now, but actually this top, I've never mounted it. I don't really know why. I think that I meant to get to it at one point and I just didn't have the stuff and I never did. And then eventually I just never did. And now it's just like this funny joke that I have with basically myself. But it does what I need it to do. And the great thing is eventually when it kind of bites the dust, I'll just throw another top on it. This is the Grizzly G0715P table saw. I bought this about 8 years ago or so, and honestly this has been one of the best things that I've ever purchased. It has cast iron wings, and even though it actually looks like a cabinet saw, it's actually a hybrid, but it has the enclosed cabinet and everything, and it looks like a traditional cabinet saw. That being said, I've had this switch go out on me and I've replaced it. I think I've got a bearing that's going out actually on the motor. So I'm gonna have to look at that at some point. But for the most part, for the last 8 years, I've worked it pretty hard and it's done pretty well. Right over here to the side, there's a kind of a blank spot that was here, and it's actually designed that you can either add another wing on here, or you could put in a router table. I just built a little box and I mounted this box inside of there. And that's kind of where I just house my micro jig, like that, my push sticks, feather board, things of that nature. actually works out really good. The only downside is it does fill up with dust, so that's not good. And it shares a vacuum cleaner with the planer that I've got here. So I've just got that hooked up to a rigid vac. I know that that's not as good as a dust collector, and honestly it doesn't do a great job, but it gets me by for now. Eventually I will buy a true dust collector for this, but it's time and money, just like everything. This is an old cabinet that was Jessica's grandpa's. So in here is where I house the biscuit joiner, multi-tool. I've got my big DeWalt router in here. I've got a big rotary hammer drill in here. Some things like that, things that I don't use as often, but are still easily accessed. And I think it's kind of cool that this was Jessica's grandpa's and to be able to still be able to use this. Then I just took a cheap piece of plywood and I just laid it on the top here, cut a couple of grooves so that when I run my table saw sled through that it doesn't hang up or hit anything. And then I was able to use this as an outfeed table. So it kind of doubles as two different things, and it works really well for what I need it to do. This planer is the Shopsmith 12-inch professional planer. My dad actually gave me this. He had it for about 30 years and then gave it to me. And then I've used it a lot. And I find that it works really well. I've replaced the knives. I've had to replace the bearings on the cutter head. I know that you can buy a helical cutter head for this. I just haven't done it. I know it's a little pricey. Probably one of these days I will. The other thing is that I did put a dust collection system on it, so you can buy that from Shopsmith. And honestly, man, that made a huge difference, because before I was just ending up with huge piles of chips and stuff out here, and there's almost none now when you hook this up to the vacuum. And it shares the vacuum with the table saw that sits right here beside it. So turning around here, this is the wall right here. This is the wall that had the lumber rack and stuff on it. And so this is a little alcove that comes in right here. This goes into our laundry room right there. Got brooms and things like that over here. Fishing poles hanging there. Around the corner from this fridge, I've got my weed eater, blower, that kind of stuff. Over here, I've got a couple of folding tables, sawhorses, ladders. I've got a 3-ton jack here. Also right here, we've got a fridge. That is one of my favorite things to have in the shop. It's just great to be able to have ice cold drinks and stuff like that. But also it's really good because, you're not taking up the normal fridge with thawing meat and things like that also. So it's really good to have that. So as you can see, I don't have a ton of expensive tools. I've got a good table saw and a good miter saw. But most of the other stuff is just the average type tools. I hope that you've been encouraged by that, and I hope that we all remember that when it comes to watching our favorite creators on YouTube, we're all in different stages and phases of life, and so just remember that when you're watching this stuff. I hope that you've been encouraged by the fact that you can create a lot of cool stuff with just average tools, because we do it all the time. I've built a lot of furniture, I've refinished a lot of furniture, and we're remodeling a house now. So it is possible, and so I hope that you've been encouraged by that. If you got any questions, leave them in the comments below. I appreciate you taking the time and watching this. Consider subscribing and hit that like button if you've enjoyed this. You guys have a great week, and we'll catch you next time.